Youngins are really starting to get on my damn nerves.
Prepare nonsense.
Your fault.
This is a high school coaching job influencer. His favorite type of horse is Jesus Swift. He's man on sorrow. Chris Bam.
Yeah.
All right, this is episode 4. Coach David Thrower just retired this year after being carried out on a shield at Mount Zion High School. One of my best friends. He's like a big brother to me. He started out his career as a Parks and Recreation Director in Baxley, Georgia, and Claxton, Georgia, and actually started his coaching and teaching career at Temple High School in Carroll County, and finished it. Spent some time in the middle of his career in Carroll County, and then finished up again at Mount Zion, Carrollton, in Carroll County. So tonight, this week, we've got Coach David Thrower. If you don't know him, you need to get to know him. Coach Thrower, it's great to have you.
Hey, Chris, I appreciate you letting me come on your show, man. This is quite an honor, especially considering this is state championship week, and you got a lot of coaches with a lot better resumes than your phone a lot of better resumes than I do that are you got numbers and access to. So, but no, it's a pleasure to be here. I've enjoyed listening to you for the last couple of podcasts, so it's all been a lot of fun.
Well, Coach, I laughed and told my wife that we were talking about getting you on here, and she said, well, crap, y'all been doing this for the past 15 years about once a week. You're just recording it this time. So it's actually kind of funny.
I just want to make sure the stories I tell were don't get anybody fired or get anybody in trouble. More PG than rated R, you know what I mean? So
oh, yeah, I got you.
We've got some good ones to go on both sides, but I don't want to cross the
That's fantastic.
Line on it. We'll make sure we keep it fairly clean.
So when you started at Temple back in, what would that have been?
94 was my first year there.
And Coach Oglesby, was he your head coach?
John Oglesby was one of the teammates in college. We were the same age. John was from Manchester originally. A lot of people know his brother Greg was the head coach of Manchester in the 90s when they helped a great run. And the field in Manchester is actually named after Greg. But John was a Manchester guy. He and I were great friends, and still are. And he went straight into coaching out of college, and I went into the rec business for about 5.5 years, and I worked in 2 great towns down in South Georgia, and worked for 2 great rec directors. I was kind of like the athletic director type guy that was kind of second in command, but I was kind of over all the youth programs, that kind of stuff, which was a great, really a great opportunity to kind of get myself aligned and start coaching, because I never felt like I was really a rookie coach, because I did so much rec department days, as far as toward athletics and supervising and coaching kids, and taking them home and organizing and scheduling and purchasing equipment and uniforms, that kind of stuff. So I had a pretty good background going into it. I had an older brother that was a high school coach. He was a basketball coach for 24 years, but he was 18 years older than me, so he was like the second dad. So I kind of grew up watching him coach, and was always around a lot of football coaches. It just kind of grew from there. But yeah, John O was my first boss, and he gave me my first job and gave me a great opportunity to coach. And spent 2 years at Temple, and that was 2 of the best years of my career. Temple was a school. I think we had 20 players maybe my first year, maybe 26 or 7 the second year. There were about 200 kids in high school. Maybe, I don't know, there were like maybe 8 or 10 schools in the state playing football that had less enrollment than we did. So, this program was only about 5 or 6 years old at that time. So we started from scratch, didn't have a lot of facilities, didn't have a lot of money. But our kids played hard, they worked hard, and it was a lot of fun. It was a great experience. I got a valuable lesson just coaching on Class A level, and really having an opportunity to, John O gave me a lot of responsibility. Got a small staff, had about 5 coaches, so I ran the weight room. I ran the special teams. My second year, I called the offense, and way before I was ready to do it. But it was a great opportunity to coach and kind of learn and go from there. So it was that was a totally great experience. I loved being at Temple those 2 years.
So where did you leave? Where did you go after that?
Well, after Temple, I went out to County, which is where I grew up. And I've gone down there and spent 7 years down there. I actually worked for 3 different head coaches down there. Rob Ridings, worked for Bubba Jeter, and I worked for Tommy Walker. And it was kind of unique situation at the troop at that time because that was the first time Callaway High School was built. It was that 96 school year. So they had redrawn all the attendance zones down there. So basically, Callaway opened up with about 600 students. And they closed out Hogansville High School, the old Hogansville. And they sent all those kids to Callaway. So when they built Callaway, they built kind of the north end of town there. And those Hogansville kids went to Callaway, and then Troop and LaGrange both sent kids to Callaway with a rezone. And then Troop and LaGrange spot kids. I think the Department of Justice came in there and wanted to make sure that all the schools were kind of lined up around 60-40 racially mixed, because that's kind of what the community represents. So LaGrange got where their school was majority minority, and then Troop had got where it was heavily Caucasian, and it was almost like a different deal, almost like a segregated deal there for a while. So when they came in there, they redrew those attendance zones so they could make sure that every school was basically the same as the way it was the racial makeup. It's really in the long run made it better.
Right.
But at the same time, it's tough down there those first few years because a lot of those kids from LaGrange, they were very resistant about coming out of the troop because obviously their dads and their uncles and their brothers and their cousins and everybody they knew were Grangers. And it was tough those first few years to kind of get those kids to kind of buy in and play it together. The kids played hard down there, but they were just a situation where those kids kind of grew up not liking each other. And for those first 3 or 4 years, it was a tough deal. I mean, the whole school was tough. We probably had fights after fights. You had to come to school and break a fight every day. And it's probably a good thing our coaching staff was all in their 20s and 30s because bottom line is, I mean, they were going to scrap down there because those kids just didn't like each other. So getting them to play football together was even a bigger challenge. But like I said, about 4 years after that, it's kind of started getting better each year. And I think it's obviously, that's kind of time that took care of that. But it was a real challenge down there when we first got down the troop, I guarantee you that.
Now, which staff were you on where y'all had the guy that y'all had to have him home? What was that? What was that story you were telling me about?
This was actually not true. I don't want to say what school it was, but you're talking about the weekend jail?
Yes.
Yeah, well, I don't want to go into that with and I really want truth. I won't say what to do, but I don't want to get everybody in trouble. But yeah, we had a kid that got in trouble with a law over the summer, and it wasn't anything major. It was just kind of those deals where he was wrong place, wrong time, and with the wrong crowd. Well, the judge down there sentenced him to 30 days in jail. He had to pay a fine. And we're fixing our football practice. This is like the beginning of August, and we're like, what we're going to do? We got to have this kid. He's a good player. And, we don't see him go to jail. No. So we ended up the money to pay the fine, but he still owed 30 days. So the judge, kind of a football fan, and we got him to consent to what he did was come up with the idea that the kid could go to jail on the weekends, but if he, he go to school Monday through Friday, he could play on Friday night. But then he had to go to jail on Friday night after the game at midnight. So we had to get him back from the ball game by midnight. And if we played out of town, we were kind of spread out sometimes in some of the regions. We had to hustle up to get him back here so they could take care of him. And come back on Sunday. They would let him go home on Sunday evening, so he could kind of get ready to go to school on Monday. But and then the big deal was, if you ever have Saturday games, where you have 1 or 2 a year, heck, you had to get that joker. You had to have special permission to get him out on Saturday. to go play. So it was a challenge, but it actually worked out pretty good. I think the kid ended up got straightened up a little bit and did pretty well for himself. But that actually wasn't true. That was another school. I don't throw that one out. Somebody's gonna know who I'm talking about. I don't want nobody.
Well, I know it was Troop where you played a lot of Saturday games.
We did. We did play a lot of Saturday games. And this happened after I left Troop, but Coach Walburn had a kid that I think he played 9th grade when I was down there. So all the games was, he was basically Monday through Thursday guy. We didn't dress any freshman on Friday night. But a couple of years later, after I left, the kid had kind of worked his way to the starting lineup. And they had some Saturday games in the lineup on the schedule because, we're in a region with those Columbus schools. They had like 7 or 8 Muskogee County schools in the region. They shared 2 stadiums, and then in Troop, we were sharing with LaGrange and Callaway. So there's always there weren't any Thursday games back then. There were most on Friday and Saturday. And he was Seventh-day Adventist. That was his religion. So, and his family was thrilled about, that was their religion. They were serious about it. But he couldn't play on Saturday either. So it was a big ordeal. I remember Tommy telling me, this is when Coach Walton said, that he had to write a letter. He had to go meet with the parents. He had to go meet with the local chapter of the Seventh-day Adventist. He had to go meet with a head guy somewhere else. Not the president of the Seventh-day Adventist or whatever it's called, the Grand Poobah, whoever. But he had to go. This was a challenge just to get the boy opportunity to play because you didn't want him to start 7 games for you on Friday and then find a backup 3 different times, So, but to get him to play on Saturday was another one. So it was always something, you know what I mean? So yeah, Tommy got that one pulled off, but it was I always told Tommy he could be a UN ambassador, but because he could go in there and talk to most anybody, kind of get what he needed. But he had to go through a big to-do, had to write a letter, had to meet with, I don't know how many times he had to go meet with somebody, but it's a 7-day finish. They don't do anything on Saturday. That's their religion. Saturday was the Sabbath, for them. So it was just a done deal that he couldn't play on Saturday. He couldn't even come to school on Saturday. But got that one taken care of too. So it was always a challenge, that's for sure.
Well, were you on Coach Walburn's staff? Were you on his staff that time? Y'all came out at halftime and couldn't find him?
Oh, that was the year. That was actually the year after I left. I left after the 2001 season, and that was in 2002. They played in the playoffs and played Thompson. And I had been to Thompson a year, so I can't remember the configuration of the locker room, but I think they were underneath the home side bleachers, if I'm not mistaken, the visitor's locker. So they went in a halftime, but this is year Thompson won the state. They were loaded. And Crew was playing up pretty tough. We've been at the home year before that. So we've had a good team. It was like 7-0 at halftime. It's still a ball game, And it's a big crowd there. Thompson's like, they're right line of 1 of the state. But Crew's in there and they're playing tough, good ball game. They go into the locker room at halftime and they go through the normal halftime deal. And they got ready to go back out for the second half. And Tommy said, hey, we're going to get in the restroom. So Tommy goes in to use the restroom. And he's in there for a few minutes. And he comes to come out and he's locked in. So he's locked inside. So I don't know if it was a stadium security guy. Somebody locked him in the locker room. Well, that joker couldn't get out. And he was trying to kind of get up and negotiate, couldn't figure out where he was at. He was trying to go from this place to that place. And ended up, they found him on top of, he was sitting on the tractor when they finally caught him. But the game had already started. And they go out for the third quarter and they kick off and got the ball. Well, Troop starts marching up the field. And this is their best drive of the night. They get 2 or 3 first downs in a row. So they got the ball about midfield. And Tommy, wherever he was at underneath the home side fans, they could see him under the bench. And they recognized him as being the head coach. So they just started talking. They're talking smack to him. And the game's already 4 or 5 minutes into the third quarter, and Walton showed up yet. And the Troop got the ball, and they're moving. Tommy was primarily the defensive guy. He was kind of more on that side of the ball, so it wasn't unusual for him not to get out there. He wasn't his ball with the offense, so he got down to 4th down and 3, about 4th and 4 at midfield. So they looked for Tommy to figure out if they want to punt or go for him. Tommy ain't there. Tommy's locked in the locker room, and nobody realized it. So it was funny because the fans were over there. They saw Tommy. Hey, coach, y'all got the ball. It's 4th down. And Tommy's like, they're probably Tommy every day. Tommy's back to it. And then he goes, hey, coach, y'all going for it? Y'all going for it? And I think Thompson had those linebackers that went to Carolina, and one of them just drilled a Troop running back in the line of scrimmage. He goes, hey, coach, y'all didn't make it. So they finally went by the locker room and got Tommy out by halfway the third quarter. He was 50 times, but unfortunately, I missed that one. That was the year after I left. But Tommy was always just fun. He was probably the guy that I would have the most stories about to fit this kind of thing because he was just He was a funny guy himself. Anybody out there in the coach profession that around Coach Walworth and knows him and knows him well, and he's always kind of life of the party and cuts the food. He's a good storyteller. You need to get him on this show. But
Yeah,
that
he's
Joker,
good.
he was fit to be died when they come. So, I mean, everybody jazzed him about that for 20 years. They'll still bring it up. There's a group of coaches around. Like, he's retired like 2016 or 17, but those 4 or 5 coaches anywhere, if they go out to eat and stuff, somebody's going to bring the sport up. That's coming back to the
Yeah, he's a good dude.
Tommy laughs about this stuff. He laughs at himself, too, so he doesn't take it too serious. Now, those fans are just ripping him up, so like, hey, coach, y'all didn't make it.
Yeah, I can see. Well, where were you when you left Troop? Where did you? Is that when you went with Rob?
Bob Cleveland was our DC at Troop, and he got the Alexander job. And I'd never been toward Atlanta or Douglas County where I know much about it. So, but I'd never been an OC. And Tommy, we had a great office coordinator Troop. Stacey Card was there, and he just I learned a ton of football from Stacey. So. I wasn't really going to move up at Troop, anytime in the near future. And I had interviewed for a couple of head coaching jobs that all season. By that point, I'd been coaching for about 9 years. I'd ran the weight room, and I'd been the special teams guy and that kind of stuff at Troop. And I would actually have the assistant head coach title. So, I wanted to be a head coach at that point in my career, but I'd never really been OC. And that's kind of rare to hire somebody who's never been a coordinator on the east side of the ball. And so Rob gets the Alexander job, and I decided to go with him. And I didn't know much about Alexander. I know we had scrimmaged them a couple of times when I was in Troop, like in 96, maybe 98. They had some good football players. They had some good teams there. What I didn't realize, Chapel Hill High School had been built just down the road from them around that 98, 99 period and took a bunch of their players away. And we got to Alexander, and, man, it was a challenge. We just didn't have any kids. And I knew Alexander was a bad football situation at that time. I think, give Douglas County credit, I think their school system's coming there, and they built facilities, and they try to up the coaches' pay. So it's a lot better job now than it was then. But they actually went 15 years in a row without a winning season. I like from 98 to 2013. That was just a dead-end job. I mean, there were some really good coaches that come through there. Tim Barron won a state championship at Hurd. He was there, and he couldn't win there. Mitch Finley followed us. Rich was on staff at DC. Rich just won a state championship at Bowden. He couldn't win there. We couldn't win there. I mean, the guy that came behind us, Carroll came behind Rich. Kenny Palmer did a great job. He couldn't win there. So, it was just a tough situation. But when we got to Alexander, the first spring practice, we're all driving up different places because, Rob hired a whole new staff because Barron had taken a bunch of those guys there in Hurd County with him. And, when spring practice ended, okay, we took all the stuff we had bought for spring, like, our defensive line coach, who happened to be Finley, had a bunch of tires that he used to use for alignment. So he'd put tires down, like they were working, slants and that kind of stuff. He'd put those tires down to simulate offensive alignment. And that was how the line goes. You'd have a tire, whether it was painted a 1, a 2, or a 3, whether it was like head up the, inside shoulder to guard, or head up the guard, or outside shoulder to guard. Well, Rich stacked the tires up over there outside the weight room. He got about 6 of them. And then I had a bunch of hoses that I used off offensive line. I had them rolled up real nice and deep. I put them over there outside the weight room. So when spring practice ended, we got through the spring like May the 19th or something. And then had like 1 more week of school, and then we were going to start weights like June 2nd or something like that. We'll come back June 2nd, and all of our stuff's gone. And I'm like, where's all our stuff at? We couldn't figure out what's going on. And they said, we kind of investigated, found out, county inspector came by, and he said your tires and your hose said it was a haven for black widows and spikers. So we're like, are you kidding me? I mean, this was what their mentality was. Like, somebody came by there and didn't even realize we were actually using this. This was not, trash. This was something that we used every day in practice. So it was a challenge. Alexander was a tough place. I think we won 5 ball games in 2 years, and was probably 5 upsets. I don't think we had enough players to beat anybody, but we had a good staff, though. We had some really good coaches on that staff. Stephen Holmes, who was at Manchester, was our first year coach on that staff. Justin Brown, who went on to be a head coach at Trine, had a great run at Trine. He was on that staff. We had a really good group of coaches. Mike Widener, who played down at Georgia Southern, was with us. And great guys. Everybody got along good. But it was just a real non-competitive situation. It was like football to them. And I liked those principals down there we had. They were good guys. And they were all former coaches, which drove me crazy because they'd come in there on Thursday while we're practicing. And one of them, they kind of did it in jest. They'd come in there and they'd drop a play and leave it on the board in the coach's office like this is something they want to see us run. And the AD was the one that was doing it. Now, this guy, he just retired as a superintendent. I'm not going to say his name, but he didn't know a lot of football. He's a good guy. But he drew up his plays when we run. So I sat there and looked at it. I called him up the next day. I said, "Hey, Rob," I said, "I'll tell you what, buddy." I said, "Next time you draw up something when we run, let's make sure we have 11 on the field, 7 on the line of scrimmage." Because that joker had 12 guys on the board he drew on offense. I think he had 5 on the line of scrimmage. So it was a challenging play. But Alexander, it was a good experience because I guess we were coordinated for the first time, so they weren't very good when we got there, and it was just tough for 2 years. We were in a lot of ball games.
Well, you left there and y'all went to VR after that, didn't you?
Bill Rick for 7 years, and I worked with White Law for 2, and then Rob got the head coach job. Bill Rick didn't have a lot of facilities there, didn't have a lot of money there, but they did care about football there. And our kids played hard, and they worked hard in the weight room. We had some good football things. We couldn't really get over the hump. I mean, it was one of those deals where we won 6, 7, 8 games a year, 8 games a year at one time. We never got past the first round. We had some good years there. We just couldn't. We were tough seasons always. Bill Rick people they were supportive to an extent, but then, there was this kind of fractured in the community. I think some of them like this coach better, and some of them like that coach better. And it's one of those places that had some good athletes, that had some good players, that come through there. That had some good teams that come through there. Had actually won a state championship in the 80s, but at that time, it was in like 2004 to like 2011, I was there. It was just one of those deals where we were competitive every year. We played hard. Kids were, well coached, we felt like, and did a good job with them. But we weren't going to overtake the top teams at AAA or 4A at that time. We were just good enough to put a good team on the field. But we had a good staff there. I mean, we had some great coaches on those coach staffs down there. A bunch of those guys ended up being head coaches. And, I can name 7 guys or 8 guys right now that have been head coaches and all done well as head coaches that came through there, during that time period. So VR was a fun experience, but it was a tough school day. That place was unique. Now it was a situation where they would put 200 kids in that gym, and there'd be 3 teachers in there, and they'd give you a roster. You'd have 40 kids in team sports, and you may have 28 in personal fitness, and they were on your roster. The next teacher over here, he had 2 rosters full of kids. We'd have 200 or 300 kids in that old gym. We called the gym the Thunderdome. Scott Peavy came up with that name for it. He was on our staff, and it was like we just tried to hold them together, keep anything from happening, because it was like, my rules in team sports back then. I come up with this thing, and my rules were no fussing, no cussing, no fighting, no stealing, no disrespect. Keep your clothes on. That was the number 1 rule. Because you never know. You look underneath the bleachers, and there'd be somebody crawling up underneath there, and they're doing something they ain't supposed to. It's going to get everybody in the world in trouble. So you had to be on guard at all times there. I can remember, like, college coaches coming there, recruiters, and Joker Phillips. I remember he comes in there one time, and he looked around, he says, I ain't used the word he used, but I'm just like, holy cow, how do you do this? And I said, I looked at him, I said, well, coach, there's a method to the madness, but there's a madness to the method. But Mike Nelson, the reconditioning guy who worked with Rydell and Shutt through all these years, he used to love to come by and see us because it was like little Las Vegas in there, man. You just had to keep it on. You may have a card game going over here where there's kids over there and there's $40 on a table, and they're over there or in the bleacher just playing cards. Or we had a kid one time come through the gym, and I noticed he had the suitcase every day, and I'm like, he's got a suitcase he walks around with. And it was one of those suitcases, he had the handle you could pull out. And I look up, and then about a week or 2 later, he's got the suitcase open. So I walked down there, and I heard him. He's making change, and this cat is selling daggum snacks and drinks out of his daggum suitcase. And he had this little compartment, like a little cooler. And this kid's like I said, his name was, we called him Double Cheese. I said, Double Cheese. I said, what are you doing? He looked at me. He said, Coach, he goes, man, he goes, Dad is out of work this month. He goes, we just need a little help at the house. I said, Double Cheese, have at it, brother. Go do what you got to do. But he was selling drinks and snacks to kids. And I guess he was going to the Dollar General and turn around and sell it for $1 at school or $2 or whatever. You know, just crazy stuff like that you see. But we had a good place. I mean, it was a good school, but it was a challenge. That was a tough work day. Truth and Villa Rica both those places were challenging. They really were.
And you left from there and went to Perry?
Went to Perry and stayed down there 2 years to Stacy Harden. Had 2 good years down there. End up leaving Perry to go to Tryon with Justin Brown. Justin had worked with at Villa Rica. Stacy I'd worked with at True. So I spent 2 at Perry, 2 at Tryon. Went back to Perry for 2 years. Worked with Carl Dixon, which I love Carl. He was been an assistant coach for like 38 years. And he ended up getting a head coaching job, you know, kind of late in his career. But good guy, good football coach. And then go down there the first year and Carl gets cancer right there in that first season. And we were in a tough region. I think we played 4 region champions. The games 2 through 5, everybody we played won their region. So our non-region schedule was brutal. And actually beat Macon County, which we probably had no business beating them. But went 2-8 that year, and then come out the next year, and but I think 4-6, and Carl got let go. Which, you know, Kevin Smith came in behind us, and Kevin did a great job. And I had a chance to stay with Kevin. He asked me to stay, and that kind of stuff. But at that time, I wanted to get a little bit closer back to my home, where I was from. So, but Perry was a great school system. Had a lot of resources down there, good place. And the first time I was in Perry, we were good. We had some good teams, made the playoffs, and we're always in a tough league. But we had some players down there, and just the second time we come back, it had changed a little bit. We didn't quite have the same guys, and the schedule had gotten even more rugged. And it was a battle those 2 years, but it was a good experience. So Perry, a lot of still good friends down there. I've talked to some guys from Perry in the last day or two, you know, since they played the state championship yesterday, and a couple of old fans that kind of hung around and kind of been around that program forever. They keep in touch with me, and the old principal I work for, he called me last week. And Perry was a really, really good place. I wish I probably could have spent a little more time down there, but it just didn't work out that way.
How awesome was that for them to finally win one? I mean,
man, for the Perry people, you know, I said for years, Perry, you know, the thing about Perry was this: the Perry kids didn't have a lot of confidence in themselves. And I really feel like at that time when I was there, they were almost beat down because, you know, everybody around us was good. You know, Warner Robins was a traditional power. Northside was a power. Peach County was their big rival, was a power. And then even outside of our area, you know, like Macon County had won state championships. Hawkinsville had won state championships. Dooley had played for the championship a couple times. So it was almost like everywhere you turned, everybody was good. And we were just kind of like, we were just fighting. And the Perry kids, we had some good athletes, but I said, and I told somebody one time, I said, I think the average guy in Perry, I said, there were like 3 places that people worked at down there. They worked at the Air Force Base, they worked at the Frito-Lay plant down in Kathleen, or they worked at Bluebird in Fort Valley. And I said, I think the average 35, 40-year-old guy at Perry, he goes to work every Monday. He wants to brag about his school and his team, but he really has a hard time doing it because this guy's from Northside, this guy's works alongside him. He went to, he went to Warner Robins. This guy's from Peach, and he, you know, even when I was down there the second time, Jake Brown was a Hokos. The Hokos having their best teams in years. So everybody was good, and we were just kind of battling for what was left. But yeah, for Perry and Kevin. To do what they've done down there, I couldn't be more proud. I texted him today and congratulated him. I think they did wonderful down there. And there's still a couple guys on my staff left that I know is pretty much turned over, but a lot of good people down there, a lot of good supporters, and good community, good place to live. You know, like I said, I wish I could spend more time down there, but you know, I didn't get fired, didn't get cut loose. I just told Coach, I was one thing I did is, you know, I worked for 10 different head coaches. And I never stayed anywhere when we had a coaching staff that turned over, because unless somebody on the staff got the job. Because to me, that new head coach, he needs an opportunity to bring in his guy. And even though I was never, everybody I worked for, when they got let go or when they took another job or when they went in administration or when they retired, for whatever reason, I never was asked to leave, but I always felt like, you know what, this guy may have somebody else he'd rather have. And I had enough connections in coaching. I had enough friends and ties. I knew I could find another job. And so that I always could land on my feet somewhere. But man, I was proud for Perry. I really was. That was a fun ride to see them and watch them yesterday on TV.
Well, didn't you take a head coaching job for a day one time in South Georgia?
I did. And I was at Villarica, and I went to Pelham and interviewed. This was in 2008, I believe it was. And I'd been on some interviews, and I'd actually been offered a few other jobs before. But I liked the idea of Pelham, make it a city school. And that was another, area where there was good players down that area. Not necessarily at Pelham at that time, but they were in that area. So I go down there and I interview, and I went down on Friday, and I asked the guy that was interviewing me, I said, look, they had a home basketball game at night. I said, you mind if I stay and watch the basketball game tonight? Because I spend the night at a little hotel anyhow. And he said, yeah, that's great, And I said, okay. And I said, look, I need to see the weight room. And they were in an old school that was like downtown. They wanted to they were building a new school, but they weren't going to be ready for another year. So I knew where we were going to be at that year was going to be right there where I was, interviewed at. He said, well, I don't have a key for it. He goes, our head coach is coach wrestling, and he's almost got a key for it. And they just left to go to the tournament. I'm like, this is kind of a red flag there. So I wanted to at least see what it looked like, And but anyhow, I went out and interviewed on that Friday. Well, they told me, they said, look, we're going to make a decision and let everybody know something by next week. And I said, okay, that's fine. So I wasn't sure if I had a chance or not. Well, the guy called me back like on Monday or Tuesday. He goes, look, the job's yours. He said, you interested? And I turned it down. I said, look, I appreciate it, but I really don't want the job. I said, I'm sure y'all going to find a good guy, this, that, and the other. And we kind of let it go with that. Well, he calls back on Friday. And he goes, hey, man, look, I've been trying to. His assistant principal was working all this out. I think the principal was about to retire. So the assistant principal, I guess he was going to be the next principal. He was trying to work hard to get the thing going. And I appreciate that. But he called me back on Friday, and he goes, hey, man. He goes, look, I got more money for you. And he said, I got another spot for assistant coach. He goes, this is going to be, this is going to be a pretty good little situation. We want you to come down here. And I said, look, and I was kind of torn because I really wanted an opportunity, but I wasn't sure if this is the right one or this. And they were like 0-23. They lost like 23 in a row. So I knew it was going to be a big time deal. It was going to take at least 2 or 3 years to at least get it competitive. And go down. So he said, look, he goes, can you let me know something? And let me know something today. I said, well, look, let me kind of process this. So I hung up the phone. I said, I'll call you back this afternoon. So I hung up the phone, and we were leaving to go to the Nike clinic. And I took the job, and I called the guy back about 2 hours later. I actually got in my truck and just rode around Villarica. And I just want to think to myself, I kind of want to get away from the class and the gym and the weight room and all. So I didn't want to be around anybody because I just kind of want to think, what I want to do here. This is kind of a big deal. And talking about relocating and that kind of stuff. And he goes, so I called him back, and I said, look, I'm going to take the job. I said, I want it. He said, that's great. He goes, I'll tell you what. He said, I got to go to a conference next week on Monday and Tuesday. He said, I'll be back in town Wednesday. He said, call me back on Wednesday. He said, we'll get together. He said, I want you to come down here next week and meet the superintendent. And I said, all right, that's fine. So by the time I got to the Nike clinic, word had already kind of leaked out. I'd taken a job. So, I had like 10 people at the Nike clinic. Man, congratulations on your job, And I'd already talked to a couple of coaches down there that I knew, and I'd asked them to send me some film. That's before I turned it down the first time. And so the film was already in the mail. Well, I got back on Sunday from the clinic, and I knew I didn't want that job at that point. But it took me a day or two to figure it out, and I couldn't even sleep. I was like, I don't really want to go down there. That's just it's not where I want to go. They got to, they deserve to have a coach that wants to be there. So I ended up called the guy back on Wednesday and turned it back down again. Of course, he got hot bad on that one, and I don't blame him. But bottom line is that they did better by getting somebody else because I didn't really want that job, but it was an opportunity to be head coach. And I think the next year was like 2008, so the economy kind of busted. They ended up losing a bunch of those things they promised me anyhow, as far as financially and that kind of stuff. So it worked out for the better. But yeah, I told everybody, I said I was the head coach for 4 days in Pelham. I said I'm only coach that's undefeated in school history and never gave up a point. So but Pelham has done well down there. I think they've got a good program down there now. But I didn't feel like I was going to be the right fit down there. So that's kind of what happened.
Well, I only asked that question to set up the Price Jones story.
Oh,
because I know Price Jones had success in Pelham.
That's right, he did. He was the last guy before that that had done well. And
you must tell everyone the Price Jones story.
I got a friend of mine named Tony Graziano. Everybody knows him as Rock. He lives down in Columbus now. He's retired. And Rock and Price were buddies. This is before I knew either one of them. But Rock was coaching at Madison County, not like
Morgan County.
Morgan County, yeah, Madison, Georgia. He was coaching at Morgan. I think Price had been out there with him. But anyhow, they were buddies and they'd worked together and that kind of stuff. So Rock's telling me his story later on. And I think Price might have been up in Athens or something, or I'm not sure where he was at, but they talked to each other on the phone and they said, hey, I'm going to be up in Athens Saturday. And Rock was like, hey, yeah, I'm going up there Christmas shopping or this, that, and the other. So they ended up, he goes, look, we're going to go out and go to eat together. And he says, that'd be good. So let's do that Saturday. Let's kind of plan on it. So when they got ready to go eat, they said, hey, let's go meet by that, Price told Rock, he goes, let's meet by that Mexican restaurant over there by the Thesaurus store. And Rock's like, the what? And he goes, the Thesaurus store, where I'm talking about Atlanta Highway over there by such and such, such, such. And Rock didn't have a clue what Price was talking about. He says, Thesaurus. He goes, what are you talking about? He goes, yeah, the Thesaurus store. And Rock said, well, spell it for me. And he spelled out Toys R Us. That was the name of the store. I won't go use names because I didn't really know Price that way. I did get to know him later, but great guy, great coach. But he wasn't much of a shopper, I don't think, as far as children's toys, because he kept calling it Thesaurus. And Rock said, that's Toys R Us, Price. What are you talking about? So, I don't know if they ever got together or not, but anyhow, yeah, the Thesaurus store, that was the funny one. So, yeah,
you were trying to tell me the other day a story about, and I'd never heard it. You never told me about it. The two kids on an ambulance.
Oh yeah, that happened. That happened in True. That was actually right before I got down there. They played like Riverdale in a home game, and I'll tell you another story too after that. It's pretty good about that. They played Riverdale, and it was the quarterback for True. They put him in the game on defense right at the end of the half. I guess they were like prevent or something. So Riverdale gets a kid that gets hurt on that play. The last play of the half, I think it was, if I'm not mistaken. Well, the ambulance comes out to check on the kid. Well, the True quarterback was on the field, still on the field. So the team goes in the locker room at halftime, and when the guys are out there tending to the kid from Riverdale, the True quarterback walked over there to him and goes, hey, Doc, he goes, I hurt my shoulder that last play when I got tackled. He goes, will you look at it? And the doctor looked at him, and they're putting the kid from Riverdale on the ambulance to take him to the hospital. And the doctor looks at him and goes, hey, just go on and get in the ambulance with us. We'll take him to the hospital. So this was the starting quarterback. And the coaches are going to the locker room for halftime with all the players. And the starting quarterback, who just dinged his shoulder, gets in the ambulance with the kid from Riverdale who's got apparently a pretty significant injury. So they haul off to the hospital in LaGrange, and True goes in the locker room in the old Callaway Stadium locker room down there. It was small, so you can only put just so many kids in there. So I think they brought the defense in there first, and the defensive coaches were going over their game, their second half adjustments. So then about halfway through the halftime, they come out and the offensive coaches go in. But the offensive coach, the coordinator, he jumps up on the board. He immediately starts drawing something, and he starts talking to Tony. He goes, Tony, make sure now we're in this formation. Blah, blah, blah. He goes, now they got too high. We're going to do this. They got one high. And he said, Tony, now where you at? And the kids look around and says, Coach Tony got in the ambulance with that boy from Riverdale. So the coaches are sitting there. It's about 6 or 7 minutes before the end of the halftime. They got to go out for the third quarter, and the starting quarterbacks rode into the ambulance with the kid from Riverdale. the guy hurt. So it was like the end of the third quarter, beginning of the fourth quarter before they finally got the kid back to the stadium got there to play. So, I mean, kids will do some stuff sometimes. But the doctor just looked at him. I said, just leave him say, yeah, tell you what, just come on ambulance with us. We'll look at you when we get to the hospital.
He said, all right, then.
And that's exactly what the kid did. So he did what he was told to do. So he didn't really fault him. But, yeah, I think the true coaches, they were going nuts on that one. So, and I tell you, I know when they told me down there, when I got down there, it was pretty good. They had a Saturday game up at Terra Stadium. I think it was actually Riverdale again, if I'm not mistaken. This was another year. And they play up at Terra Stadium. And it was a Saturday game. Well, at Troop, the biggest deal at Troop was getting all the kids there. Because we had like 75% of your team lived 8 to 12 miles away from school. They were scattered all over the south end of that county. So they used to run these buses down to West Point. And they have these pickup points. They're down there. They go to the church. They go to the rec department. They go out there in front of the house authority place. They pick up all these kids, and they would get them on a bus and they bring them back to the school. They did that year round, 12 months a year. They did that for every sport. I mean, that was part of the agreement when they shut down West Point School and merged with Troop. They'd run these activity buses. Well, they had a new bus driver that day. The guy was subbing for the main driver, and the guy was supposed to pick up like at 2:30. Well, he shows up at 2, not 2:30. Well, there were only like 2 or 3 kids who were even there. And there's like 30 kids supposed to ride this bus. And this was like 9 of the defensive starters and about 5 of the offensive starters are supposed to be on this bus. Well, the guy that drives the bus, he gets there at 2. Well, he picks up 3 or 4 kids. He thinks that's his load. So he just takes them back to the school. Well, when he gets back to the school, all the coaches, you know how it is. You got a Saturday game too. They're fixing to go to a pregame meal and they're kind of getting around and they're getting all everything together. This kind of stuff. Because they're going on the road, so they got to get all the bags packed and everything. They're leaving like at 4:30 or 4 to go to Terra Stadium, maybe a 7 o'clock game. And they look up and they said, "Where's everybody at?" They said, and the guy goes, "This was all that was on the bus." He goes, "What do you mean that's all that was on the bus?" And the guy, and they looked at the watch and realized the guy went down there early and none of the kids were there. So all the kids showed up after the bus had left, and then they hung around and just got frustrated. They all just left. So now the kids have all gone back home or walked back home or rode the bike back home. They all left, and we got a Saturday night game. We're leaving in less than an hour, and we don't have any players. All the kids are gone scattered. So the coaches are, they're in panic mode now. It's a sense of urgency. So they all jump in their vehicles and they just go run down to West Point, which is like 12 miles away. Get on the interstate, probably breaking every law they can to get down there, speed limit wise. And they get down there and they find this kid and find that kid, but they can't find this kid. So they're scattered all over the place. Well, down there in the little project area over there, that's where a lot of those kids live. So the one coach kind of knew that area real good. He just parked his vehicle and started walking because he knew. We all knew when I coached in the world, which little apartments they all lived in. We'd taken those kids home so many times. Well, he goes down there to this little back alley corner where people used to kind of congregate sometimes. And there's about 6 guys over there in the corner, over there in this little alley, and he recognizes linebackers over there. This kid's like 230 linebacker. He's a stud. And he walks over there with him, and the kid's name was the nickname was Baboose. He was a dog. Now this guy was the alpha of the defense. And Baboose has got 2 dice in his hand and about $200 in one hand. He got about $200 in the other hand. And he's gambling. He's on the road. And the coach goes, "Baboose says, we got to go." He says, "This Riverdale, we got to get on the road." He goes, "Coach, you're going to have to wait for a little bit because I'm on a roll right now." So he's throwing dice and winning money. And it's like, "Coach, Baboose, we got to go." So he's trying to talk the kid out of going. You know what I mean? Like, we got to go. So it's one of those deals where I don't know. And they actually went 8-2 that year. And that was one of the games they lost. I think they probably should have won that one, but they couldn't find half the dang go team when the bus driver messed it up. So this is the kind of stuff that the normal person that sits in the stands on Friday night pays $8 per ticket. They have no clue you're going through all this during the week, trying to just round up kids and get them there.
Well, some of my favorite times after I left Carroll County, because I remember you used to bring in, you still took the LaGrange Daily Times.
Oh, yeah.
The actual paper. And you used to read the police blotter to me.
And,
it was hilarious. And we would just get tickled with the level of writing and the way the guy said whatever, two women got into a fight out in the Dollar General parking lot, and she was beat about the face and neck or whatever.
Yeah, beat repeatedly about the face and head. That was her favorite line. It was always one thing about LaGrange, George. Now people learn how to fight down there. I mean, like they were not afraid to throw hands down there. So
probably why they're so good at football.
Well, that's probably true. So that was one thing about kids down there. They knew how to fight. Now we never had to worry about kids that were being physical. They could all run, and they didn't mind striking it. Now sometimes getting them to play together was a challenge, but that other part you didn't have to worry about. We had a corner one year that was a really good player on our dome team, and he got in some trouble, some kind of domestic deal, and that whole season we played us in 2001. That whole year we had to go offense first on Mondays and Wednesdays because he had to attend anger management classes. So I mean that was one corner. The other corner led the reads and interceptions, and that joker made like 420 on the SAT. Great little player, and took the SAT and made 420. They give you 400 points for signing up. But the thing about it was the kid was actually an intelligent kid. I just don't think he knew how to test. And anyhow, he ended up getting in college, played 4 years, played 2 years, I think, at a JUCO, then 2 more years. And decided we're going to end up playing the Canadian League for about 3 years. But we had one corner that was anger management. The other corner was a 420. And then the free safety, who ended up playing major college football, we had a kid. I mean, the first day of practice, he didn't show up. And this kid ain't missed a workout or a practice in 3 years. He's not there. He's the only kid we had to play both ways that year. He was our backup tailback and our starting free safety. And he was a stud now. This was his junior year. He ain't missed a day in the first 2 years he was there. He's not there. And it's like August 1st, first day. You know how everybody's geeked up the first day. Well, he's not there. So the second day he didn't show up. So we're calling him. We can't find him. Talk to Mama. Mama's like, Coach, I don't know where he's at. This joker, he's sorry. I tell you what he's doing. I don't know what he's doing. But anyhow, we go down there and find out he's been shacked up with some 28-year-old woman about a mile from where he lived. And she done, got hold of him. And he done like, this is a whole lot what's going on here. This extracurricular activity is a lot better than football right now. So, and we've had no other instances of that. I know when I coached wrestling at True, this is a good one. I don't know if I ever told you that, but I was an assistant wrestling coach, and our wrestling program was like 9-time state champions. The coach was a character now. I mean, he never met anybody like him. He was a lot of type A personality. He would bend and break and circumvent every rule. He didn't mind doing it. But we had wrestling over the Christmas holidays. We had a tournament. And we go to this big 2-day tournament they got at McIntosh, like December 22nd, 23rd. So it's right before the holiday. And we took the team up there. We competed. We came back, dropped everybody off. And, we're going to see you. I think we're going to meet back on the 26th. So he's going to give them the next 2 days off. Well, we had 2 kids that show up. And I didn't know beans about wrestling. I mean, he had a legitimate assistant coach that wrestled for him and been coaching with him for a while. So he didn't need me. The only thing he needed me for was make sure the football players were there. And that was my job, make sure the football guys were there. And I could kind of coach the heavyweights a little bit because they were all the linemen. And that guy, the 2 kids didn't show. So he's perturbed, because that's kind of my job to make sure they were there. So I try to call them. I can't get hold of them. Can't anybody answer the phone. So the next day, they don't show back up again. So he's like, go down there and find them. Well, I said, I'm going to call Grandma one more time. So I called, they live with her grandmother. So I called Grandma and I said, ma'am, I said, this is Coach Thrower at the high school. I said, I hadn't seen, and I won't use her name. I won't use her name, but I said, I hadn't seen these 2 kids in the last couple of days of practice, and we're just trying to check on them, make sure they're okay. And she goes, oh, Coach, don't worry about it. The boys are doing good. And it was that Christmas holiday. It was like in the 90s. We had like a record cold spell. I don't think it got over like 30 degrees for the whole week. I mean, it was like the low would be 14 every day, and the high would be like 28. It was brutal. And I said, well, ma'am, I said, where are they at? She goes, oh, they up there at a hotel in Atlanta. The rest of the team went to a tournament, and they got the bus locked up. That's what she said. The bus locked up, and they couldn't get back. But the school's got them in a hotel, and they feed them, and the boys are fine. They're going to be home in a few days. And I'm like, wait a minute. Now, I was on that same bus, and we got back fine. And I know they got off the bus because saw when they left. Well, same thing. Go investigate down there. Them jokers done found them a couple 30-year-old gals down there, and they're just enjoying life. You know what I mean? So it was always something. You know, we had the same thing at Villarica one time. Kid goes missing for about 3 days, and ninth grade football player. They had a bunch of foreclosed houses over there around the old school. Now they've torn those houses down now, but I think he got off the bus one day, and instead of taking a right going toward the school building, he took a left and went toward those foreclosed houses. We missed him for about a week because there was some gal down there that hadn't caught hold of him. So you got to battle a lot of there's a lot of things you got to battle in some of these places. That was those were interesting conversations. But Grandma didn't have a clue. Bless her heart. But the boys had done convinced her that they're fine, that they're getting fed, and the school's got them taken care of, and they'll be home as soon as the weather breaks. Or they get them a new bus.
Oh, there you go. I mean, fair enough.
Yeah, so that, and I never talked back to Grandma as far as like, I just told the kids, I said, y'all get your butt to practice. Let's go. Come on, we got to have you. You know, like, you can't really get totally mad at the kid. You know what I mean? Like, you can act like you're mad at him, but really, truly, like, you know, I get where you're coming from. You know what I mean? So it was always funny. That old wrestling coach we had, he was a recruiter too now, and when they hosted the Olympics in Atlanta in '96, the South African Olympic team used to come down and practice at the practice facility Troop for wrestling, and they were housing them in LaGrange College, so they were practicing there for like 4 or 5 months. Well, he got to know all those international coaches for the South African team. Well, then lo and behold, about 3 or 4 years later, we got 2 foreign exchange students from South Africa. And apparently they were like, you know, younger kids then. I don't know how they connect with these coaches, but they enrolled at our school. And like, these guys aren't ranked number 1 in the state of Georgia. These guys are ranked number 1 in the world. I mean, they're like 100 and one's like 170 pounds, the other's like 152 or something. But I mean, they're just drilling people. Nobody can even come close to those guys. So their junior year, they both go undefeated. The team wins the state, the whole 9 yards. And then the next year, of course, foreign exchange students, I don't know what the rule is now, but the rule of Georgia high school is you got 1 year and you're eligible, and then you can't go beyond 1 year with eligibility with a foreign exchange. So they show up to school in August the next year. And I asked Darryl, I asked the coach, I said, D, I said, I thought they couldn't wrestle this year. He goes, no, don't worry about it. I'm going to get taken care of. I'm going to get fixed up. I said, what are you talking about? I said, Georgia high school. I said, everybody knows that rule, Darryl. I said, how you going to do this? He said, I don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. That joker, he either knew somebody that had rental property or he had some rental property, but he knew somebody with some trailers. He got those jokers lined up, and they were like 2 girls that were like in their 20s, and these little just horny young women, and they agreed to marry these kids. They were going to marry these 2 high school senior South African kids so that they could become American citizens. And then under the white book at Georgia high school, they would have to recognize them as, you know, they were not going to fall under the foreign exchange deal. Now they were going to be U.S. citizens. So he's going to marry. He's getting these girls lined up to get married. I'm like, what do you mean you going to do that? He goes, I don't worry about it. He goes, we'll get them annulled in March after the season. He goes, so he would do, that kind of blew up in his face. I don't think that ever worked out, but he actually had 2 of these girls that he probably taught in school that were just kind of, you know, young women that were just looking to have some fun. And they're going to marry them because they were both actually kids now. Both of them were. And one of them probably like a male model, you know, he's like one of those guys, like Tom Brady, you know. And so they didn't have no shortage of girls that were clamoring after them guys anyhow to begin with. So he had 2 grown women that were going to marry him, they were going to move in his trailer. And they were all going to live together and have a big time. They were going to get them through wrestling season. And I'm like, no, man, I don't think that's going to work. But he would do anything he could to win a match. That's for sure. I mean, there was no rule he wouldn't mind breaking. I promise you, that joker would do anything he could to win. But yeah, Troop was definitely an interesting place.
So after your second stint at Perry, you went back to Mount Zion, Carrollton, and that to finish off your career.
Yeah, I had moved, you know, like 4 times in 7 years at that point. I said, I'm not going again. This is it for me. Because, got to remember, I got late starting coaching. So, I was already in my, 53 then. This was 7 years ago. So, I wanted to finish up in one place. And Brad Gordon had just got the head coaching job at Mount Zion. He'd been to D.C. And if somebody would have told me in 2011 that when I left Little Rick, I was going to come back and finish at Mount Zion, I'd have said, they ain't no way. Because Mount Zion was a football, it was a football door, it was a doormat. It was a pretty bad program. It just never had really been very consistent, but it just was a tough place. But they had come in there and built a new school, and they got a coaching staff to come in there and really worked at it hard. And I think the prior coaches worked hard too and did a good job, but they just didn't have much to work with. And they came in there and kind of got that program resurrected and had some good years. So Brad was the DC then, and then he got the head coach job in 2017, and I've been here ever since. So, and you saw us play down at Clinch one night. I think you were at early then. Y'all drove over and watched us play in the semifinals that year.
Mm-hmm.
So that was an interesting team we had that year too. We had some characters on that team, but we had some good football players. That was the kid. That was the team I told you about. We had the kid that was the center for me, and real tenacious, little gritty little kid. But his mom was the principal, and the kid was brilliant. He was smart, valedictorian, but he was autistic. And coaching him was different. And a great kid and awesome. Just wonderful family, great people. But coaching him was a challenge. And he was full blown autistic. So when he would have a moment, he'd have a moment now. And we were at practice one day, and his granddaddy, we used to come out there and watch practice all the time. And his stadium's named after him. He was a former coach there in the 70s. He'd been a school board member for 20 years. And we're in the middle of practice one day, and he was argumentative because that's part of his autism was he would ask a lot of questions. I would say he's argumentative, but he always wanted to ask a lot of questions. And in a group period, coaching offensive line, you got 15 minutes, maybe 20 if you're lucky, fundamentals and all, and you're trying to get all this stuff in. And he wanted to stop and ask you questions. And we'd already been over this stuff 1,000 times, and we've drawn it, we walked it, we talked it, we put it on the board, everything, handouts every week, so the rules ain't changed, but him being in his state of mind, it was just, he was just different. And we're out to scrimmage one day, or actually going team offense, and the D scout team lined up wrong or something, and whatever I had told him to play before, I had to go tell him, I said, go block backside, and it would blow his mind, because anytime you have to make a change like that, he won't know why. And right in the middle of the play, the play kind of broke off. It was a big run. And right as the back broke through the line, he turned around to me, and he had just he wanted to fight. And he goes, Coach, that makes no sense at all. And I just went off on him then. I didn't really curse him, but I said, damn it, Cade. I said, I was coaching at the Georgia Dome when you were shitting yelling your diapers. I said, don't you ever question me. I said, get your butt back here and call a huddle. And he looked at you and goes, all right, coach. So he was going to do what you asked him to do, but he wanted to know why he had to do it. Right. And that was just him, but great kid. He was a gritty little kid, but, and he'd never really played before. He'd been in a program, but he'd never really played. But it was a challenge to get him going, because, sometimes we would have an 8-hour coaches meeting on Sunday, and 4 hours of it would be devoted to make sure that he could get this now. Because, like I said, it was a struggle for him football wise. Kid's already got a college degree. He's going to do well in life, but football didn't come easy to him. And you've seen that before. You got kids that are, they can be valedictorian, but football wise, sometimes they struggle. And then you got kids that they can pick up football easy, but then they get to the classroom and they struggled. So that just wasn't his element. But he ended up doing a good job for us. We had a great year that year, but that was the funny kid on that team. He was always, we go to lineman camp the next year after he graduated. And our kids, for whatever reason, they got kind of paired up with Grayson. And Grayson, Honeycutt was coaching there, Christian, and they were power, and still are. And he had all these, power 5 guys on his offensive line, and all I had was a bunch of little dirt daubers from Mount Zion. We had some good little kids. They loved our kids. Grayson kids loved those kids at Mount Zion, and they were like two different cultures. Because Mount Zion kids were mostly rural, poor, kind of you know what I mean? Just, kids that were just, it was a challenge for them. And the Grayson kids, you kind of got the impression they were probably pretty well to do. They lived in a good home and had 2 or 3, cars in the garage. And mom and dad were both educated and they paid education and they had degrees. And this one kid, he's playing for Michigan now. He started right tackle in the Big Ten championship game. He comes over to me. He goes, "Hey, coach." He goes, "Where's your center at?" And I said, "Big man." His name was Trent Jones. I said, "Trent," he graduated. He goes, "Doggone, coach." He said, "I thought he was coming back." He goes, "Man, we were talking about him on the way down here." So he was a great kid. I mean, he had a personality. Everybody kind of liked him. But he was so smart. It was hard to really coach him, you know what I mean? Because he was so smart. I mean, just way smarter than I am. I promise you that.
Well, I'm glad you said that about those kids at lineman camp, because I know you were a staple at Coach Hodges's lineman camp, and just the way things have changed since you got in it, in the coaching profession. And I know Coach Rhett Parson and a couple of other guys are trying to start a lineman camp to get something going again, like what Coach Hodges had. But I know you were a regular at Coach Hodges's camp.
I was.
And just how
Isaac and them got one down at Georgia Southern, Isaac Farrell, last summer. And I didn't know about that one until after I'd already kind of committed to go to the one at Jekyll. And Lance Helton and Rhett put that one on. But, what Coach Hodges did was special, man. It was unbelievable. And, he ran a quarterback receiver camp the week before that, and they would have 275, 300 kids at quarterback receiver camp. But the lineman camp, that was kind of Coach Hodges' favorite. Now, I think he had 400 plus kids, I don't know how many years in a row, probably 20 years running. And they started that camp when he was coaching the Southern in the early 90s, and it ran all the way to the COVID year. And then since COVID, it just kind of shut down. And I think he was getting close to the end anyhow. I was hoping that I could get through my career with him still doing it, but, just missed going to that. But no, I took 7 different schools to Coach Hodges' camp and enjoyed it every time. I mean, the great coaches down there, kids got a ton of work. You couldn't ask for more. And it was 4 nights. I mean, they really got a chance to bond together as a group. But the coaching and the reps they got, and the tempo and the pace, and, you couldn't beat it. He asked me a couple of times early in my career if I wanted to work the camp. And, I'd already was working 2 or 3 camps in the summer. And I said, "Coach," I said, "I'll be honest with you." I said, "I like to come in and watch this camp." I said, "Because there's so much y'all teach." He had like 21 stations that would rotate out. They go 7 stations per practice, and they'd have like a 12, 15-minute period each one. So they hit on everything. No matter what offense you ran, you could benefit from like going to his camp. It was so fundamental based. And pass game, run game, the whole 9 yards. So, I mean, you think about it, every offense has a double team, and every offense is, going to have a scoop block, and every offense is going to have to block linebackers. Every offense got to reach block, down block. So all that stuff that he was teaching, it helped me as a coach. I know those first 5 or 6 years I went in there, heck, I took a notepad with me and started writing stuff down. Because coaches would say stuff, and I said, they'd be teaching the same way I was teaching it. But maybe their coaching point, I thought, resonated with that kid a little better. So I would try to just learn everything I could when I went down there. And it was just, man, it was a great experience. I think I went, Coach Hodges used to always kind of tease me because I'd been down there. I think he asked me one day to tell him, I think I spent 22 summers down there with him, if I'm not mistaken. I think the first couple of years were at Georgia Southern, and after that moved to Middle Georgia. And was in Cochran. I think I told everybody, I used to tell everybody vacation spot was in Cochran, Georgia every year. I don't go to Florida. I don't go to Hawaii. I go to Cochran. And
at the Royal Inn.
Hotel.
At the Royal Inn.
The Royal Inn, and then we graduated to the Cochran Inn, I think it was. But yeah, the Royal Inn hosted us for a long time.
And that's one thing that I think young coaches, these youngins, need to understand is, they say old dog can't learn new tricks, but I know for a fact that you spent 22 years at that, and you still, up until, I don't imagine you'll go this year, but you've been going to Coach Roger Holmes's Wing T clinic every year.
I've been to Coach Holmes's clinic probably, I think he started that around 07, 08, so he's probably 15 years running. I think I missed a year or two when I was still coaching track. He was doing it in mid-April when he started it, and he kind of moved it to March a few years ago. Well, after about 3 or 4 years, he moved it to March, which made it a lot easier for me. So I've been to Coach Holmes' clinic probably 12 13 times out of 15 years probably, because he put on a great clinic, and I was always kind of involved with the wing team, most schools I'd been at. So what he did was he does a great job with that too. That's one of those things that, and I always liked the clinic. Heck, I used to go to Nike and Glacier every year. And you just make a lot of contacts there too. I think young coaches, you're right. I think they miss out on some of that. I think some of them miss out on. It's not just the football part; it's the camaraderie part, and it kind of all goes together, the fellowship of it, and that kind of stuff. And you just make a lot of contacts too. I can't tell you how many places I've been offered jobs, and throughout the years, I mean, I sit there one day and I can remember vividly watching Griffin play Carrollton at the Georgia Dome for state championship. I was sitting there about the third quarter. It was a great game going back and forth. And I said, doggone, I just realized one thing. I said, I was offered a coordinator job at both these schools. And the guy sitting next to me, legally, Andy Scott sitting next to me, says, you're a real dumbass. You know what I mean? Andy don't even cuss. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
He doesn't even curse.
Yeah. Andy doesn't cuss and you don't drink.
Yeah, and he goes, hey, you're a dumbass.
Yeah. How do y'all let me hang around with y'all? You don't drink, he doesn't cuss, and I do both.
That's the thing. Like, I think I counted one time, and I hate to say this, but probably embarrassed to say this, but I counted a lot of schools I was actually offered an opportunity to go work, but out of loyalty to somebody, or I just like being in those rebuild places. That's kind of where I spent most of my career, in a build or a rebuild. But I can't lie. I'd like to go be playing right now, like Milton Walton's playing right here on my TV. But it was a great ride. I had 30 years, and heck, I made a ton of friends and coached a lot of good kids, great relationships. I was getting texts the other night when Manchester was playing Bowden because, both of those coaches I work with, and Stephen Holmes played for me, and I'm getting texts from our old Villa Rica players like, Coach Thrower, you watching the game? Coach Holmes is on TV, like that kind of stuff. You know what I mean? And that kind of stuff. That's priceless. I mean, that kind of stuff. I got phone calls from kids from Troop, and I got kids trying to keep up with me, and after all these years, Perry. There's still a couple kids in Perry that reach out to me, and I got even Temple. Like I said, that's where Coach Holmes at. There's some guys here locally that play for me at Temple. I'll bump into them at a restaurant or something, and it's all worth it. I mean, the thing I did was I realized about year 10 what this job really entailed. And I thought my first 10 years of coaching, it was all about winning a state championship and trying to become a head coach. I thought that was the only goal. And when I went to Alexander, I told you those 2 years were pretty rough. And we'd established a good program through those last 3 or 4 years. So, and I feel like we kind of laid the foundation for what they've done now down there, because they've remained pretty good through the last 25 years. But, when I went to Alexander, that was my first OC job. I feel like I flopped. I felt like, hey, I've kind of failed on this one. Well, it was really not the coaches as much as it was. We just didn't have the players. But I go down and watch Troop play in a playoff game a couple years after that. While I'm at Alexander, and it was my last year at Alexander. I knew I was going to leave that year. And I go down and watch the play, and there's a kid that played for me that was at the game, and he's in his Army fatigues. He graduated like 3 or 4 years before, like in 2001. This was like 2003 game. And I hadn't seen him in a couple of years. We hugged neck, talked a little bit, and just kind of carried on, just like you would. We hadn't seen somebody in 2 or 3 years. And we're sitting there watching the game. About third quarter, he goes, Coach, he'd already done a tour in Afghanistan. And he told me he was on call to go back. He said, I'm going to go again. It's just a matter of when. And matter of fact, he left that night before the game was over because he got a call to report back to Bennett. That's where he was stationed at. But somebody had given him permission to go to the game. And he told me, he goes, Coach, I want you to know something. And I said, what's that? I said, what's that, big man? He goes, when I got to the desert out there, he said, I'm pretty lonely. He said, he gets lonely out there. So I can imagine. I can't even imagine. And he goes, I carry 3 pictures with me. And I said, really? I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, I got a picture. They named his little girlfriend, high school. I think Jessica was her name. And he said, I got a picture of Joe. That was his best friend that played left guard. He played center. Another kid played left guard. They were best friends. He said, I got your picture. And this guy is carrying a picture in Afghanistan. And he's fighting for your country. And he's got your picture in his pocket. So at that moment in time, Donnie Branch, who was the defense coordinator of LaGrange, was standing next to me. And he overheard that conversation. Donnie looked over me when the kid left. He goes, dang, DTs, that's good stuff right there. So you just don't know as a coach what kind of impact you're going to have on a kid. Because I didn't really do anything differently for that kid. I did for most of the kids I coached. But whatever the message was, he got it. You know what I mean? And he was appreciative of it. Still, I can remember him coming to watch me play at Villa Rica. When I was coaching at Villa Rica 6-7 years after he graduated. And he'd come watch us play. So, you don't know as a coach what kind of real impact you have on a kid, whether it's good or bad. And that one hit me. But that changed, that conversation with that kid, because I was feeling sorry for myself. I was really kind of like being a loser because I just felt sorry for myself. I should have left. Here they are playing back in the quarterfinals, and I'm up there coaching a 2-18. I could have stayed right here and we'd still be winning. And when he told me that, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be okay. This business is way more to it than I thought. And I knew that, but I kind of forgot that. So when I had that conversation with him, I'm like, hey, I'm going to be okay. Next job, I'll be fine. But I realized then being a state champion was great. Being a head coach was great, but it wasn't the end all be all. You can still be successful and not be those things. So, yeah, I ended up settling into some major rebuild programs for most of my career. I told somebody, I said, I'm just a journeyman offensive line coach. I said, I probably had more 6-4 teams than anybody in the history of the state of Georgia, or set first round playoff losses than anybody in the state of Georgia. You know what I mean? We were always decent, always competitive. Most places I've been, just never great. But yeah, I had a chance to get to some really good places. I just kind of, for whatever reason, timing or loyalty, or didn't want to relocate or whatever. I just didn't always jump on it. But it was a great ride. I mean, this 30 years I've had, I couldn't imagine doing anything else the last 30 years. It has been a blessing.
We are going to miss you. The children are going to miss you. I mean, you ain't going nowhere because we're going to keep doing this. And we always joke. Most people don't know this, but we talk about once a week. And, we've always joked and said when I finally retire, because I got to catch up, that me and you were going to go do radio shows and call obscure high school games like Stuart Quitman versus Central Talbotton.
Let's go find a game nobody else is going to want to go to.
That nobody's going to go to, that the kids don't ever get recognized, that they don't have their own radio crew. We'll get Rock to be one sideline reporter and Coach Walburn to be the other sideline reporter, and we'll have a large time.
Ain't no doubt. And I can remember going out and watching Albany High School. This was the last year they had us a team down there. Last year they had a school. Scouting them one night and played Daughtry. And Albany had 26 players. And Daughtry might have had 35. They didn't have many either. And it was a great game. Both teams were fighting their butt off. But I'm sitting there thinking, these kids they're landing on the line out here. And they're not getting, nobody's, they want about a handful of people in the stands. I'm like, really, these kids deserve better than what they're getting. Because they're putting it out right now. And you're in a place to challenge the school to begin with and that kind of stuff. But it was just I just remember thinking back, those kids, they deserve credit just like these kids from Walton Milton that's playing right now.
Yeah.
Somebody's got to coach them guys, you know what I mean? And those coaches were. If you look over there, one school's got 4 coaches and 28 kids, and they're playing AAA quality football, it's tough. So, but I mean, I hadn't been in places like that. I've been in places where we were decent. We were always competitive, but I hadn't been in those places where we reeled off. I told somebody, I said, Tommy Walburn was at Troop for 5 years as head coach. I think he won 45 games. And I said, nobody even remembers that. I said, because that was the same 5 years LaGrange was 66-3. What I mean? So it's kind of like Tommy told me one day, he said, DT, the thing about you is you always coached at the other school. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, when you were True, there was LaGrange. And he goes, when you were at Villa Rica, there was Carrollton. And he goes, and when you were at Perry, there was Peach. You know what I mean? Yeah. He goes, now you're Mount Zion, there's Bowden. You know what I'm saying? So he goes, it hadn't changed for you. I said, no, it really hadn't. You know what I mean? But it's okay. You know what I mean? But that one conversation with that kid, that kind of changed my perspective on it. And like I said, it didn't mean that we worked any less, and we still busted our butt in the weight room all season and film and try to put all the time in you're supposed to. But hey, at the end of the day, it's all about those children out there, and those kids on helmets and shoulder pads, and it ain't about me. You know what I mean? And some of these coaches we get nowadays, you get the Twitter coaches and the street agents and the self promoters, and
Oh yeah.
It's probably time for me to move on. It's probably an old dinosaur like me. Probably needs to hang on up.
Yeah, the Canva posts I'd like to thank in the love letters to everybody, and I'm like to thank this person and that person, and I'm taking my talents to people like us. That just isn't how we were raised to.
No,
If I go somewhere, you'll see me in a different coaching shirt at the clinic, and you'll figure it out.
I can remember like going to those clinics when I first started coaching and seeing. I mean, like when I first started coaching, there was Nick Hyder at Valdosta, Robert Davidson, Warner Robins, Billy Anderson at Clark Central, T. McFerrin, Larry Campbell, Dan Pitts. The Dwight Hostetler was never a big clinic guy, but I mean, those type of guys, they were like Jim Hughes. They were like there was an aura around them. You know what I mean? Ben Scott. You know what I mean? You talking about a guy that had commanded a presence in a room. So I feel so fortunate just to have. I didn't work for any of those guys, but just to have been around them and just to see them and how they operate, they would talk. And heck, I texted with Justin Rogers today. That we just went to state of Thomas County. We texted a little bit, and I congratulated him on winning. And we talked a little bit in our text just about this kind of same thing. And I said, I remember going to clinic and just like hanging on to every word those guys said. And then a few years later, it was Ed Pilcher, his group, Milt Miller, Mike Hodges, Mike Earwood, Danny Chronic, those guys like that, Jeff Heron, those guys, they were to me, those were the real legends, the real guys that, I think the golden era of high school football in Georgia, to me, and before we got into all this recruiting stuff, was the 80s and the 90s and the early mid-2000s. It started changing about 15 years ago.
Agreed.
But
1,000%.
The 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s was the golden era because you had towns that supported their team, players, and recruiting's always existed. It's never like I'm not saying it never happened, but pro people didn't build their programs around that. You know what I mean? It's always been out there, and it's always, you can always name this case or that case, but for the most part, you developed your players in your feeder program. You got them ready to play in the weight room. They came through your junior high, your middle school, or even the rec league to the JV, the ninth grade, up to the varsity. And those kids grew up playing cup ball when they were 9 years old in the back of the end zone, wanting to play for their school when they got to be old enough. And that was high school football. And two towns coming together and battling out, and then go out there and knock heads with each other, and then come back 12 months later and do it again. And you got bragging rights for that amount of time in between. That, to me, was the era that we'll never go back to. You know what I mean? Just unfortunately, it's not going. It's become a business now. It's commercialized, and it's just like I said, with NIL and all this kind of stuff. I don't know what that's going to change or how it's going to change, but I know one thing: not everybody's going to benefit from it. I can tell you that it won't be equal.
No, y'all tickled me when y'all wrote up on the board the Mount Zion NIL package and sent me a picture of it, and that looked about like the one we got at our place, except we couldn't offer the fishing experience. Ours was more of a hunting, and we had the same Jimmy Joe's Quick Sack, blue Takis, and orange Powerade.
There you go. We had Burwell Corner Store. They had fresh biscuits, live bait, cold beer, and then we had the other little store down the road. It's a little questionable in there sometimes. And I think we put out overpriced chips, underage vapes, and gasoline that's quality 70% gas, only 30% water. So
that's a heck of a deal.
Little local beach there, where we got bass fishing.
Yeah. And y'all are 6 miles from Carrollton, where they've got whatever.
Yeah, all the coaches are flying to see Juju Lewis. They stop at the airport there between Mount Zion and Carrollton. It's actually in our little school zone. So the famous coaches that ride through are flying to Carrollton to go see these guys. They're flying into the Mount Zion, and they're riding right by us heading to Carrollton or somewhere to go see. Central's got a big running back now, and it's like a Power 5 guy, so I guess he'll be the next one too. But yeah, they're that's how we roll down here, baby. But like I said, I wouldn't trade it for anything. I couldn't imagine I've done anything else the last 30 years. a lot of good relationships with kids, and then just great camaraderie and fellowship with coaches. And, it's just it's been a blessing. Ain't no question about that.
Well, Coach, I sure do appreciate you being on. Look forward to talking to you again. And as always, thanks for being there for me. You've been my friend, my brother for the past 15 years, like a big brother I've never had. I love you, and if I ever need anything, you'll always be there for me, and I appreciate that.
Well, same here, every bit of that. That's the truth. It's just, it's just one of those deals where it's like, like you just said, it's a brotherhood, it's fraternity, and we made it work one way or the other. You know what I mean? But I appreciate everything you just said, and I feel the same exact way.
All right, thanks, DT, and we'll talk to you later.
Talk to you, Chris, man. We'll holler at you.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye.